my name is Sade Lythcott. I'm the CEO of the National Black Theater, and I am joined with my sister, Kamilah
Hello,
Forbes.
I'm Kamilah Forbes, executive producer of the Apollo Theater. Thrilled always to be in conversation with you, Sade, and particularly talking about the gathering. So very excited.
Yeah. We want to welcome everybody to the first conversation in a series of conversation we're calling Ring Shout Chats or Ring Shout Talks, where the Apollo Theater and National Black Theater are bringing together artists, activists, thinkers, makers, doers to talk about this incredible event that we're having called The Gathering, a Collective Sonic Ringshout at the Kennedy Center on June 1st. And I want to start just with a question to you, Kamilah, because you really were the first invitation to bring this work together over 2 years ago when it was first created and produced and curated at the Apollo with American Composers Orchestra and NBT. And it was so healing. And I think that's a part of this conversation as well, talking about the healing arts. And so I wonder if you can tell us about the origin story of how you
Yeah.
started putting this together, the team together.
Yeah. Well, one, thank you, Sade. It has been a journey, and I think a journey of responsiveness, right? We first learned out about Joel Thompson's piece, which I think became which was Seven Last Words of the Unarmed. And it became a cornerstone. We learned about the commission from University of Michigan back in 2017, 2018. Heard the music and the work and just how powerful and responsive it was to the moment. And I think had an inkling that we wanted some way to figure out how to produce and present it. At that time, we didn't have the partnership with ACO. It was just about this notion of this work and Joelle's work. And knowing it had to be in in a context of something larger, and then also where are we going to get our orchestra? Fast forward, we are approached by ACO, and with this opportunity of partnering with Joelle's piece, and obviously, working with their orchestra, et cetera. And it felt like a really beautiful revelation and match. This was obviously pre-pandemic because these conversations started in 2018. And so we knew we wanted to build out, in collaboration with ACO, with the orchestra itself, build out an evening. But also knowing that what was underneath the work, not even underneath, what sat at the top of the work was a very present and urgent conversation, dealing with, obviously, and at the core, our community and the liberation of our community. And nobody does that better and really sit at the ethos of that conversation than NBT. We knew there had to be some kind of creative partnership that sat at the core, and more importantly, right at the beginning, helping to guide and steer kind of the creative collaboration of what this work wanted to be. Because we knew, from the very beginning that there's the work, but then there's also the community rallying cry that happens around work. And so, we were thankful that y'all, you and Jonathan answered the call, and with NBT really helping to shape a lot of the community engagement conversations, and also Jonathan as artistic director of NBT, but also helping to shape the creative direction on the stage. And I think it was really exciting in the very beginning. And this was obviously pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Where we started this conversation.
Which is so wild to be on the other side of that. I mean, I think that, well, a couple of things. Joelle Thompson's piece that you were referring to, y'all, you have to come down to DC to see it, even if you saw it at the Apollo. I mean, this is almost a 100-piece orchestra, an 80-person choir, singing the 7 last words of unarmed Black boys that were killed by state violence. So it's this incredible invitation, I know, from MBT's perspective, to be in conversation, not with singularly the trauma,
Mm,
but, Joelle's kind of manifesto to humanize and
mm,
harmonize this um, sense of traumatic happening. Almost like within the piece, there was this sense of reclamation and agency
mm,
that
mm.
that was so resonant to NBT um, in the midst of a pandemic. Um, that we didn't even know if it would ever come to light, because how do we gather, right? Like, and it became the question, like, how do we gather? and and this wasn't even thinking about audiences. Like, when you think about how large an orchestra can be and how close a choir needs to be in the
Yeah,
midst of a pandemic, this
yeah,
extra heightened danger of gathering,
yeah,
we believe that, it would be a revelation just to be able to produce this event in the times that we were living in, state violence wise, but
yeah.
also health and protocols. And, shout out to Jonathan McCrory that, really took the pieces and made this beautiful sense of communal peace with framing an evening around not the trauma, but our indigenous historical practices of healing. And so the gathering was born, but really landing in a collective sonic ring shout,
That's
um,
right.
really leaning into the indigenous practice, the African indigenous practice of ring shouts, which, I don't know if you knew, Kamilah, but I didn't know to the extent of how these ring shouts were done on the continent and carried over as a ritual and a tradition during the antebellum South and slavery, as a ritual that enslaved human beings would go into nature, circle, and
That's
and
right.
and have a call and response ritual of sonic release in
Yeah,
order to prepare them for what they would have to face the next day. I
that's
wonder if
right.
you could talk a little bit about, and so Jonathan really started working in the pedagogy of National Black Theater to create a call and response ritual as the evening. And I wonder if you could talk about just the power and importance of communal healing
Yeah.
through.
Well, a couple things. One thing that was really also fascinating when we first started, and even just this conversation, Donna Walker Kuhn had worked on a project, and shout out to Donna Walker Kuhn, because there was one thing as you talked about the communal, and thank you so much, Sade, for that brilliant and beautiful and always grounding framing. Because it's one thing, sure, yes, it's a huge choir. We could have just booked a choir, right? We could have just booked a choir, booked an orchestra, called it a day, had a beautiful presentation. But there was a notion, and there was another project that Donna Walker Kuhn had been a part of, and had also been engaged with ACO about this project around the building of a community choir.
Mm.
So this was an opportunity, not just to get just professional singers that have been singing together, whatever, to learn the music, etc., but to actually build in the practice of making the work part of a community engagement, right?
Mm.
The core that is part of the community engagement is the making of the work. So it was building a choir of people from the community. These are professional singers. These are people from other choirs. These are amateur singers. These are people that answered an open call. And
Mm.
so what was ultimately devised in collaboration, and obviously with MBT and ACO, was this opportunity for a multiplicity of voices and people representing different avenues of community to learn this work together, to be a part of this communal ring shout, that to be a part of this communal spiritual and release, right? That the work is calling for. So I thought that was, just fascinating that even in the construction and the making of the work was their community building sitting at its core.
Mm. There's
So mirroring what we wanted for the audience, right? um, in that process.
It was such a powerful process and a healing process. Usually, people point to the product as healing, but to your
That's right.
point, the process was so
That's right.
healing.
That's
It,
right. That's right.
and it's like if we flash back to where we were, George Floyd had just been murdered. We are isolated in our own homes. We are trying to protect the ones we love the most
That's
from
right.
the pandemic, and the audacity of us being grounded in an art practice that we know may be scary in this moment, but is necessary and essential to begin to take baby steps back towards each other, towards what we've always known to be true, which is we heal together, we heal
That's
in
it. That's it.
community, and to design and devise a process around communal healing was really just a magical process. And to say that we brought into the fold incredible artists like Nona Hendricks and Toshi Regan and Abby Dobson, as call in response to
Yeah.
Carlos's piece, to I'm sorry, Joel Thompson's piece, Carlos Sainz' piece, and Courtney Sectum's piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, if you could talk about the other orchestral, uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. I well, I mean, what sits at the core is sort of these very, whether it's Carlos, whether it's Joel's piece, Seven Last Words, or Carlos's piece, Amen, right? Or Courtney's piece. And then you had these responses, right? So Toshi's piece being in direct conversation, right, with like a Joel's, right, or Jason Michael Webb's piece being in direct conversation as a release, right. So it was almost like it's, like in church. In church, you have a benediction, right? But then you also, it's like you have your opening processional and you have your exiting, right, processional that happens right after the sermon, so that you're able to kind of spiritually open yourselves. It's so funny. Church services are designed to a T. It is like it opens you up, you get the word and the message, and then there's an opportunity for spiritual release, right? And quite frankly, the same, and I remember these early conversations over Zoom. How do we make sure that we're mirroring those same qualities, right? For almost a religious type experience in the arc of the evening, until each piece was carefully crafted and curated in that way. And one other thing, you talked about loneliness. The NEA held a really brilliant convening about healing and really bringing together two sectors, art and health. And the Surgeon General was at a conference for art talking about a national epidemic post-COVID of loneliness. He
Mm,
coined it that we are sitting under a national epidemic, and the epidemic is literal loneliness that is increasing, high blood pressure, mental depression, and the list goes on and on and on. But the solve for this epidemic is what we do every day, which
mm,
is bringing people together in person in order for a literal physical, spiritual, and mental healing to take place, which is quite frankly a very powerful thing, and really making sure that our work is which we always knew, to be honest, right? We've always talked about it in this way. We always know to our core in this way, but it to be recognized on a national governmental level, I think is a remarkable
it's
one. So
huge.
yeah, it's huge. It's huge, and knowing now, and now when I think about actually now thinking about this work, right, which really was sitting as a cornerstone because it was meant to be done pre-pandemic and post and during the pandemic, all of the conversations about, okay, how do we make sure that we really are going to need this healing? We really are going to need this as a launching pad the second we can gather again. Hence the title, The Gathering, right? Like that was really the title, was about we cannot wait to gather and be in person in order to heal from all of the trauma that we are receiving and having to wade through. And now for this work to be done in the nation's capital,
Yeah.
is quite remarkable. Quite
It,
remarkable.
it's remarkable that we'll be in the nation's capital. It's an election year, and that we are centering critical conversations around our community, around the country, but also saying that these conversations need to center us.
That's right.
It's not the issues, it's the people. And
Yeah.
that the gathering is not just an event, but it is a manifesto that there's power in numbers, there's power in communal response, and there's power in understanding. You know, my mother, Dr. Barbara Antier, the founder of National Black Theater, she would always say, and I think this is the opus for the gathering, and it really amplified at the Kennedy Center. She says, if you know the beginning well, the end will not trouble you. And I think
Mm,
the idea that we are taking our beginning rituals, our beginning
mm, mm,
indigenous technologies, going back to
mm,
the source in
mm,
order to have future forward conversations around not only communal healing, but justice work, um,
mm,
social impact and social justice work. Uh, is so critical. And I will just
mm.
say, you know, shout out to
Yeah.
Bambi, our brother, who
Yes.
invited National Black Theater to be the Kennedy Center's Conflux partner this year. So we're doing, which is so very cool, and that we're honored. For the full week of May 26th to June 2nd, National Black Theater will be taking over the Kennedy Center campus through our Conflux partnership, offering family friendly events every single day from the 26th to the 2nd. We're going to do a live ring shout. Rashida Bombre is bringing all of her practice to the campus to share and teach what ring shouts are, and have a communal participation. We're going
Mm,
to end on June 2nd with a silent disco from MBT's Technology of Learn to Love Yourself, and a portrait series, so that we are having these difficult conversations, but we're doing it through the lens of art, so that we can hold the conversation while pushing forward these pedagogy of healing through our trauma, our issues. That justice work can look like the front line, but it can also look like deep cultural joy, deep cultural
mm.
reckoning. Um, and so we want to invite everyone who's listening to down to DC for our Conflux partnership from May 26th to June 2nd, but really the main event. And if you're watching this, we're offering a discount code, is June 1st in the Opera House. The gathering, a collective sonic ring shout, will be an evening not to forget. Tickets are available now. Shout 25 is the discount code that will get you 25% off every single level of ticket. So you can get orchestra seats, you can get box seats, mezzanine seats, whatever is still available for that 20% off, which puts, like, I think the most expensive ticket with this discount under $40. So
Which is
really an
incredible.
incredible opportunity.
That's right. That's so incredible. And thank you. Oh, Sade. Yeah, you're just the excitement and the opportunity, because you know what's so interesting? It's like you've said it, right? This is what we've always done as a people historically,
Mhm.
right? Is gather to heal.
Mhm.
And our voices and our art is never just about the performative nature. It is always about shifting um, uh, on a cellular level, but
Mhm.
also on a community level. And that reminder, that reminder is important, and an opportunity. And I always, our revolution is never by happenstance. It is
Mhm.
always by curation.
Ashe.
So the opportunity to sit in community, and the shout out to the specificity of the curation of our own liberation is key. So have partners like the Kennedy Center to have brilliant curators like yourself and Jonathan, on our Apollo's team. Shout out to Leatrice Elsie, who literally brought a couple who develops global ring shouts by the use of a solar. I mean, what is it? The thing that hangs in the air?
Yeah, that is a
It's this
satellite
whole,
where
the
it's
satellite
yes, it's a satellite ring shot
to
that we're
create
doing
a
in
global
space.
ring shout.
Yeah,
Like,
based
that
on
was fascinating.
Octavia Butler's yeah, story around a character named Star.
That's it. That's
Come
it.
on, Afro Future. I
This is
think
like,
that
we
it's
use our tools.
we use our tools and we stand on shoulders and legacies that if we listen deeply and intently, and if we remember the beginning well, not history well, but if we remember our origin stories from since before we landed on this soil, we have a North Star of how we as a people not only survive, but we thrive. And I think
Mm,
it is so special on the heels of Mother's Day, on the heels of um, all that's going on in the world right now that, Kamilah, you would take the time as a Black woman talking to another Black woman,
mm.
running these organizations and institutions that are not only proud legacy organizations, but investing in the future of Black art and Black culture and conversation, all
Yeah.
pointing towards healing, all pointing towards cultural practice, celebration, and breaking any of the curses and stigmas around what is possible for our people. So, y'all don't know the revolution will be curated, that two Harlem organizations are coming down to DC, Chocolate
That's it.
City.
Yes.
Also, want to shout out Mahogany L. Brown. She
That's
will
it.
be our virtual host throughout the evening of the gathering, and unprecedentedly so. And shout out to the incredible team at the Kennedy Center, Bamuti, Trey, Malta. They've allowed MBT to commission Mahogany L. Brown to write a new land acknowledgement for the land that the Kennedy Center sits on, which used to be a Black community called Foggy Bottom. And so this is a week full of reclamation. This is a week full of justice work. This is a week full of art that heals not only our spirits, but our souls, and hopefully in the nation's capital resonates throughout the country. It's been such an honor to be in
Yeah.
conversation with you, my
Ah!
sister.
Listen, always with you, Ashe. Listen, Sade, you got me fired up. All I gotta say is Ashe to that. Let's go. I
Let's
can't wait to
go.
see the people in DC, and
Ashe.
and just be uplifted. So thank you, Sade, always.
Thank you, Kamilah. Always, always, always. And we'll see you all at the next Ring Shout Talk.
That's it.
Keep it here.